What is a useful, if you had to say, what is something that young MMA or combat athletes are not doing that they should be doing more of? Is there any, what are the suggestions for young fighters or?
So I think in my mind with these youngest fighters, I think a lot of them have been or are being influenced now by some of the management, some of the older fighters and things like this, where I don't think they're exposing themselves to as much training and variance and competition as the athletes that are there now, right? I think some of these fighters are, it's unfortunate, especially in boxing. I mean, boxing, I'll say, is way worse than anything else. But even in MMA now, you're starting to see it, man. Like, you have these fighters now that are 10-0, 11-0, and you go look at their opponents' combined records, and you're seeing something like 3-27. It's like, man, are you really an 11-0 fighter? And that's great because guess what? That just got you to UFC, Bellator, whatever the case was, because somebody didn't really look at they just saw 11-0, 3 knockouts. They didn't look at the fact that you just fought, a guy that's a full-time lawn and landscaper that fights for beer money on the side. You didn't look at all these things. And so what I think they do is they do everything they can in their power to sort of avoid losing, avoid tough competition to get there. And when they get there, they can't make a career out of it. They can't stay there. And I think that's a really, really underlooked aspect of all of this. And boxing's really bad at this, where
you're talking about padding the record.
Padding the record and things like that. I think you're seeing that a lot, where you're seeing them picking and choosing opponents. And this is new to me, where I'll be honest, this is something that 5 years ago, like when I first got into it with the Black Zillions, and those guys were just fighting anybody, anywhere. And again, I don't think it's necessarily such a bad thing in our gym, where I look at somebody, our head coach is Henry Hooft. He's a Dutch kickboxer.
Genius.
Yeah, genius. And that's the thing too, he's a really smart guy. He comes off, everything the way he plays himself and presents himself, it's, simplicity, this and that. And there's brilliance in that idea of simplicity that he puts behind it.
Always is, right?
Always is.
Yeah.
And, he's a guy that he's not like that, man. He's old school in that aspect, that fight anytime, fight anybody, fight anywhere. And I think it's really a good culture that we've created in our gym, because even for me as a strength and conditioning coach, I've had to really find this balance between what you want to call, quote unquote, out of camp and in camp, because I don't think we really have the luxury with 90% of our fighters to designate where they're at. I think so many times these guys are being presented with an opportunity on 2 weeks, 3 weeks notice that they just can't say no to, because just the politics in this sport and promotions and promoters and stuff, those opportunities might not come back for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you don't know what could happen in that short period of time. So I think it's not so much, that's definitely not in our gym, but I'm seeing that quite a bit across the sport now, where these guys used to fight anybody, anywhere, and now people are trying to make it to the big show rather than to build a sustained career. Like, I look at somebody like Nick Lentz. He's a guy I've worked with.
He's at Stanford, right?
Yeah, 5 or 6 fights. Yeah. Dude, this guy's had 23 UFC fights or more or less, something around that.
Yep.
He's fought his ass off in every fight.
Yep.
Win some, lose some, but guess what? He wasn't doing that. He wasn't ducking anybody. Dude, he was learning lessons from those hard fights coming up, and then he gets there and he's ready to be there for a career.